We are live. Share this with the team. We are live. Share this with the team. And mute that. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to give it just a couple of more minutes and then we'll get going. All right, let's go ahead and begin. A couple of quick housekeeping items. Can I get somebody to confirm they can see our cameras, see my screen, as well as hear us all right? Great, thanks so much for confirming. All right, we are recording today's webinar. We will send out an email tomorrow with a link to the recap. It'll have both the recording as well as the deck. You can also reply to that email if you have any follow-up questions, want to learn more about sales intel, anything like that, and we'll route you to whoever needs to, and take care of any of that for you. We'll also spend have a few minutes here at the end for Q&A. We won't pause throughout it to answer the questions that you have as we're going through the presentation. But as you have those questions, please go ahead and pop those into the Zoom side panel so that you don't forget them. And we'll make sure that we set aside about 5 minutes at the end so that we can answer any questions that anybody has. All right, I think that's all the housekeeping. Thanks everybody for joining us today. You're here with Sales Intel. We're going to be talking about how to increase your productivity by 27% by eliminating bad data. So this is something that's close to mine as well as David's heart. This one's a little bit of a treat for me. I almost never get to do these internally. I'm almost always doing these with an external partner. I'm Jason Hubbard. I'm Vice President of Partnerships and Alliances. I have David Hilner here with us. He's our head of growth. David.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Yeah.
Yep.
Looking forward to this, Jason. My first one at Sales Intel.
Yeah.
Hey, got my Sales Intel shirt on, ready to go.
Yeah, we're both representing today. But yeah, David joined us what, 3-4 months ago?
Yeah, about 4 months ago, correct.
And both of our backgrounds are in growth, so we deal with the stuff we'll be talking about here day in and day out. So we feel the pain as well as have worked through a lot of the causes and the solutions to this. Before we get into that, let's talk about the agenda real briefly. So we're going to touch on why data decay, why bad data is so problematic. So how much does data decay really affect your business? How do you identify the sources and root causes of your bad data? Of course, if you don't know the causes, you can't really effectively address them and fix it. Ways to clean up your CRM, keep your data hygiene up to date, and then best practices for protecting your CRM from bad data as well as rectifying any bad data situations. So a couple of real quick slides on why bad data is such a big deal. There's obviously a lot on this slide to unpack. Again, we will be sending out a recap so you can revisit the slide. But some major stats out of this: 88% of companies have a direct impact to the bottom line from bad data. So translation there, virtually everybody. I'd be willing to say the 12% that are saying they don't actually know what's going on. Average company is losing about 12% of its revenue due to bad data. 21% of brands experience reputational damage from bad data. And then back to the title of this, 27.3% of a sales rep time is wasted dealing with bad data. So that's 546 hours a year per rep. That's a lot of wasted time.
Yeah.
I know this has been a huge struggle for me at every place I've worked. How about you, David?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's a couple, obviously the 21% of brand reputation damage, I think stands out to me. It's, having, going after the wrong individuals or the wrong companies, or having the CRM is where, most sales reps are relying on their data sets and how they go about it. I think it can really harm their outreach and how they go after their customers, and can really ultimately, damage the brand overall. But the 27.3 wasting the reps time, I think, is definitely stands out with if you have bad data. And we've gone through that many times, where you have different data providers or that you're working with, and you load up the wrong data, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I got the wrong names, I got the wrong numbers, I got the, all the above, I think plays a huge role in that wasted time. So yeah, I definitely have experienced it several times.
Yeah, the reputational damage piece. I mean, what you hear all the time about like best practices. You've got to tailor your content. You've got to segment your list. You've got to target the right personas in the right industry and stuff like that. But the instrumental piece of that is that you've got the right data to be able to do that and do that effectively. And so as effective and as powerful as all of that is, it's equally damaging whenever you send the wrong content to the wrong people. It makes you look like you don't know what you're doing. It turns people off. And yeah, I mean, no matter how good your product or your pitch is, missing something like that is huge.
And
I
mean, it's also, go ahead. Jim. Sorry. No, I was just going to say, it's also another piece of it is the reputational piece of it is also online as well. It's not just the customer itself, but if you have bad clicks, or if you have bounces from the emails that you're sending out, all of that the reputation, through your domain can also, harm you as well, obviously. And all of a sudden, more and more emails are going into your spam filters or into their spam filters for some odd reason, because and the sales reps are like, hey, what's going on? And so there's a big, I think, discrepancy there as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and as you and I talk about it all the time, like we both have had experience both managing as well as working as a SDR in the past. And I mean, that's a grueling grind for a lot of people. It's a lot of effort, a lot of dialing, a lot of outreach to be able to connect with somebody and get a demo. And so whenever you exacerbate that by having a significant portion of the data of the phone numbers and emails that they're trying to reach out on being incorrect, bad, or being the wrong person, then that's not only a waste of time, but it's very disheartening.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think that especially the other piece of it too is like, as you're doing any type of, outreach, and like you said, there's that piece of it from a personal standpoint when you're going after these companies and most of the data is incorrect. And then you're also getting a lot of bounce backs. It also makes you question the organization or the marketing teams, and actually helps like kind of, uh, there's a divide and an immediate silo that goes into it. Like, why is this data so bad? How are we collecting it? What's going on? And the trust factor between the different departments also starts to become a question as well. So I think it's, we're stating the obvious here, but I think that that's, that goes all into, what we talk about reputation, and then also like the effectiveness of your SDRs or your BDRs or your AEs. So yeah, totally agree.
And of course, it's extra unforgiving for us because we're a data provider, and nobody's going to be perfect. But that's the number one thing we hear is like, "Oh, so you're a data provider? You can't even get this straight." So we're not even immune to it ourselves. But all of that stuff, of course, translates into a financial impact. So on average, financial impact of bad data on a business is $9.7 million per year. So obviously, that's going to vary pretty widely based off the size of the company. I mean, if you're just a few $1 million company, obviously it's not going to be a nearly $10 million impact. If you're $1 billion company, it's going to be a lot larger. But across B2B organizations, it's nearly $10 million per year as far as the impact. So all of this makes it really, really clear why this should be important, something you're concerned about. So now I'll spend a little bit of time talking through what are some of the sources of bad data. So the first one, duplicates. I mean, this is the one that drives me absolutely crazy from an ops standpoint. I mean, I get so sick and tired of adjudicating conflict between two different reps that were both trying to tackle the same account, stepping on each other's toes, or hey, somebody scheduled a demo with somebody I was already speaking to. I was just talking to somebody the other day. They were like, "Hey, you had 3 reps reach out to me," and it's like you go in and you look at it. It's like, well, okay, I can see why there were 3 different accounts, and some of that is stuff you can do something about, and some of it, I mean, no matter how good you are at it, unfortunately, duplicates will never go away. There's always going to be weird use cases around it. You've spoken some about the invalid, undeliverable emails. I mean, that absolutely has become unforgiving as an email marketer over the last few years. I know you've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, again, the emails, the bounce rates, I mean, those all definitely play a big role. And again, that number, the financial loss, I think overall, I think that it's, the idea behind it is, I think as SaaS organizations like we are, and again, my background, just like you, Jason, I've spent, especially the last 7 years, really using data to really kind of drive and streamline my process through a SaaS organization. And so as you're trying to streamline that process, if you have bad data that comes into it, that all of a sudden now starts to break that process as much, as you're going through it. So the more friction points that come up, and data and bad data, I should say, plays a big role in that. Then all of a sudden now you're wasting time. And I think the SDRs or the BDRs or the AEs start to waste more and more time trying to fill in those gaps, or trying to justify why the data is bad or whatever it may be. And it does slow us down. And so that's especially when you're an emerging type of organization and you're growing really fast, you want to kind of put gas on the fire as opposed to stopping it and slowing it down you have to put more manual processes in place to manage that. So again, those manual processes affect the overall effectiveness of the team, and then ultimately the revenue. So
Yeah, it's become absolutely unforgiving when you make mistakes, especially doing it at scale. I mean, you rewind even just 5-6 years ago, you could get away with loading in, 50, 100,000 new people and have like a 10% bounce rate. And, it might ding you a little bit, but it wasn't something that was going to be a huge deal or something like that. You try and pull something like that now, and you will destroy your domain reputation. It'll take you 3, 6, 9 months to recover from it.
yeah.
Meanwhile, your email marketing is just completely shot. It can even go all the way down to like your entire sales team is not able to even get emails out to people. I mean, literally can leave you dead in the water.
Yeah, and as more of these automation or nurturing tools that are going out for the SDRs that are coming out more and more, and they're using them from an automation standpoint, or sequences as they're building them out. If they are continuously hitting the wrong data points, or if there's the wrong email address or whatever it may be, all of a sudden they're getting dinged on those, and it could lead into spam. And a lot of the, and I said this actually almost 10 years ago, but it's even more stringent today. The spam filters they get better and better every single day. And so and better, maybe a term that's kind of loose here, but they're being more stringent and how they're going out, like the number of dings that you get if you send a couple emails to the same company, and then all of a sudden 3 of them get dinged because or bounce, then all of a sudden now, where that person no longer works there or whatever it may be, all of a sudden now like you said, your domain reputation is starting to you're starting to, get, and the worst thing you can do is get blacklisted at that point because of what you're doing. So,
yeah, and then the data decay part on this one is another one that a lot of people don't think about. But most people think a lot about their data sources. Was the data bad from like input? But data decay piece of it, even if your data is 100% completely accurate, 100% complete, no missing gaps, anything like that, if you don't do anything to stay on top of or maintain that data, you're gonna see that data decay at about 30% a year. So about a third of your data, if you're not staying on top of it, it's going to become unreliable, inaccurate over the course of the year. And that's of course assuming that you started with 100% accurate, complete data to begin with, which nobody does.
Right.
And so that's a huge problem, and a big piece of it that a lot of people don't think about. They think about trying to clean up the mess, or making sure that their inputs are reliable or complete. But you also have to stay on top of managing that data and keeping it updated over time.
Can we go back one more? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the bad numbers too. I think that plays a big role in also the effectiveness. I think in today's day and age, I mean, less and less individuals are looking for, they're going through the phone lines, through the office phone lines, especially in a COVID world. I think that mobile numbers become bigger and bigger, or direct lines, or those type of numbers. So if you don't have those, and they're bad or something, that you're getting a lot of disconnects, or you just don't have the right data in your CRM for that connection, I think in a lot of ways, that also is those are big friction points that you're looking at in your automation pieces that you're trying to build out. So again, I think bad numbers, and then also just not having the right number in there, or, just becomes a bigger issue. And again, mobile, I think, as it's becoming a bigger, it already is obviously, but as with the COVID, where most people are working from home now, mobile becomes like almost everything to most organizations at this point, trying to reach out to the appropriate individual. So, sorry.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, bad phone numbers don't have to necessarily mean like it's not the right phone number.
Right. Exactly.
It can be that it's not the most effective phone number.
That's
I mean,
right.
everybody knows how difficult it is to go in through the main phone number, or trying to get past or stuff like that.
Yeah.
The interesting thing in a post-COVID world is those direct dial desk phone numbers that used to be gold. For a lot of organizations, even this far into it, have still not gotten around to forwarding those phone numbers to cell phones. And so those direct dial desk phones have now actually become one of the least effective ways to get in touch with people. And of course, that's where having those mobile numbers becomes so important. And of course, we had that case study that we did not long after COVID hit with ScaleX, where they took our work mobile numbers and compared that against dialing into switchboards and desk phones. And they found that in post-COVID, desk phones were as ineffective as dialing into a switchboard. So it really highlighted how much of that had changed as everybody started working from home. But the other big piece of it was using our work mobile numbers. They were getting a 7 times higher connection rate, which whenever you're trying to make lots and lots of phone calls just to get a few conversations a day, increasing that sevenfold is enormous for a rep.
Yeah, and one more source of bad information I didn't see on here that probably we could probably add it would be the form fills and the automation as you're starting to build those out. I think that if you don't have the correct form fill information on there, or your enrichment platform isn't the best in the world. Jason, I think we lost your.
Yep. Sorry.
No, sorry. I think the form fills can also lead to, like, if gaps or missing data that goes into what you're collecting, or the person just you're not getting the right. You're getting like maybe a personal email or something like that. Then you can't correlate the two, or your enrichment platform isn't as strong as you might think it is to kind of to automate that process. I think can also lead to bad data, and so you have to watch that when you're, especially on the marketing side. Like, you have to be very careful of like what you're asking for, and make sure that you are getting the right information before that they can move on, so that you can keep that. And it's probably on your next slide here, which it is.
Yep.
Anyway, just wanted to kind of point that out. So
yeah. So we've figured out or talked about some of the ways to that you're actually getting the bad data. So what do you do to try and clean that up? So very first thing that you can do is make sure that make sure the data you're ingesting is as accurate as possible. So if you don't want to keep cleaning up a mess and want to minimize the size of the mess, quit adding more to it. And so reliable data sources is huge. So like you were just talking about there, David, well-structured lead forms, making sure you're asking for the information that you need, making sure that you're clear in what you're asking for. If you've got a mislabeled or a vaguely labeled field on your form, you're going to get all kinds of stuff. Also, a reason to look at having a standardized pick list in your form, as opposed to having it free form where people can enter in whatever. You can have validation around it. So having validation for emails, that can range anywhere from eliminating people being able to use personal email addresses like Yahoo, Gmail, stuff like that. Making sure that the email syntax is correct so that it has an at with a proper domain suffix. All the way down to there's even some tools out there that will go out and ping that and make sure there's not a bounce back on that email address whenever they enter it before they'll allow it to be successfully submitted. So things like that are hugely beneficial. And then, of course, being able to have a reliable data partner. So somebody like us that has reliable data that you can use to add to your campaigns, can use to enhance the data, automatically enrich it as it's being filled out, and being able to automatically be able to go in and enrich and clean up that data. So if you've got missing data points in the database or that data decay problem, all big ways to try and eliminate as much of this cleanup process on the front end as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that, as a, prior to even joining Sales Intel, I've worked with, as worked with quite a few data providers. And I think the biggest area of like actually cleaning it up or actually going after like where there may be missing data or gaps is having that research on demand element that Sales Intel does offer, which I think that's, just having that as easy as possible. It would, even if I wasn't at Sales Intel, it would be a huge benefit for me, just to make sure that data is clean and that I am ingesting the right, so that by the time it does get to the SDRs or to the AEs, that we have the appropriate information that's necessary. So, yeah.
We touched on enrichment, but quick piece on us internal as a little plug. So we've got enrichment in the portal. You can upload a CSV, and then we'll return a enriched CSV that you can export and then import into whatever. But we also have a direct integration with Salesforce where we can do it in real time as records are created, or you can schedule it, or you can do batches based off of certain sections of your database. And then the really exciting thing for us is this week we released the same thing for Marketo. So again, being able to do all of that enrichment in an automated fashion to be able to complete as well as update, stay on top of your data in there. Deduping, I've talked about deduping being one of the banes of my existence. I hate having to deal with duplicates, but like I said, no matter how good of a job you do with it, you're always going to encounter duplicates. And the most effective strategy that I have found for it is really kind of a two-pronged. You build out as best you can to have automated deduping on the front end as new records being ingested and created in the system. So you can minimize the number of those duplicates that are coming in. And then you also have a fallback deduping procedure reporting where you can see anything that might have slipped through the cracks, anything that didn't get triggered correctly, and then hopefully identify those fringe cases. That you can never build all of the automation that you need, and a lot of times you're going to need some manual review to figure out, is that truly a dupe or not? Things like organizations that change their name or have multiple naming syntaxes, or may have subsidiary companies, or instances where they may have acquired a company, stuff like that. One of the biggest problems I run into is, there's multiple different domains associated with it, with, of course, domain being one of the primary ways that you identify duplicates. So, what do you do in that scenario? So deduping is always going to be a problem. But something a lot of people don't understand or recognize is that having an AVM strategy actually plays into helping to avoid those duplicates. So, if you're juggling multiple different objects, so to speak the syntax of Salesforce, if you're dealing with leads and contacts and accounts as separate objects, separate entities, then you've got a whole lot more space for duplicates to occur. You also have a whole lot more opportunity for reps and people within the organization to step on each other's toes and duplicate efforts. Because, for anybody that's not familiar, a lead does not attach itself to an account. So all leads are independent of each other, and it's really hard to then do any sort of account-based strategy around any of that. And then, the last one I'll touch on, I'll let you jump in on it, David, is culture. And this is one that's vastly underappreciated. But no matter how good of a job you do with any of this stuff, no matter how many tools, how many processes, whatever, if you do not have a company culture that puts value and priority around data hygiene, you're only going to get so far. You have to have that be a priority where people are going to put in the actual manual effort to fix stuff that's wrong. And another huge piece of it is, no matter how well you build this stuff out or design it, stuff's gonna break. Stuff's gonna fall through the cracks. And your frontline defense of that are your reps that are actually in there using that data on a day-to-day basis. So they're the ones that can give you early warning signals that something isn't quite right and you may have missed something.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Jason. I think that's, and especially, and again, more in today's day and life of how an organization is built. You have so many hands in the CRM nowadays, like where you have SDRs, you have AEs, you have CS, you have, everybody is like, everybody in the organization pretty much has their hand in it. And as new accounts come in, and if you're not able to, and you don't have a strong culture and understanding exactly like who should be manually entering this stuff, or who should be, if there are systems that are being made that are put in place of handling some of the automational pieces of it within the different departments, all of that plays a big role. And it really comes down to just really kind of strategizing, understanding like how people are entering it in, what they're doing with the data, and then again, just making sure that everybody is aware and having those reports and showing like, hey, look, this is what we have, this is what we're working towards, and just kind of knocking it out in a systematic way with each of the stakeholders within the different departments. So I think that all of that plays a huge role in like, keeping up to date on the process. And it's not I think it's an imperfect science. I think you'll always have some level of like, but it's something that you strive as an organization to work around those efficiencies that you're working to really kind of drive, again, like the overall, like, so that you don't get those duplicates. Because again, I think the duplicates and those organizations, especially similar ones that maybe sister organizations of each other too, where they're, you're not 100% sure if that they own this other company too, and it's the same organization. They just live they have different names and everything. I think that also plays kind of a big role in the duplications and how people are going about it. So I think, again, just having that where you can talk to each other and building that structure of culture where you're a little bit more open and you can go across, to the SDR side of things as an AE, or CS can go across and talk to them and say, just really kind of understand that, whatever data is being put in, that there is a level of like trust between each individual within the different departments. So again, I think that culture piece speaks speaks a lot towards handling the bad data and working out the systematic problems that you might have where other people are getting involved within the different departments. So, and then again, automation I think plays a big role in that too, and helping kind of build that too. So manually, like, hey, look, this systematic approach, like where SDR comes in, they have their pieces to fill in, to check out. AEs come in, they verify a lot of the content. The CS does exactly the same thing. So again, it's almost full circle in a lot of ways. So and building those automation pieces where they have to do these things before it can actually move on or go through the next process, I think is super important. So. Yep.
We're running up on the end of time here, so I'm going to get through this last one really quick. We've got a couple of questions already in there. So last up is, if you are going to consider a third-party solution, whether it's a deduping engine, whether it's a data provider, whether it's an enrichment, whatever. Some questions to ask yourself or ask that provider. How is their data sourced? Are they compliant? So especially with the rollout of things like CCPA and GDPR, is their data actually compliant? Are they following the practices they need to stay compliant and for you to be able to be compliant? It's also worth noting, just because your data provider is compliant does not mean that you're automatically compliant. You have to be compliant in how you use that data as well. How often is the data updated? So even if they start off, back to the data decay problem, even if they 100% accurately verify their data, which of course nobody can do, but let's just say they are, if they don't have a re-verification process in place, then that data, if it's older than a certain period of time, is going to start getting pretty unreliable. What integrations do they have? So I spoke about, Salesforce and Marketo for enrichment. We also have integrations with major sequencing tools like Outreach, SalesLoft, HubSpot is another marketing automation platform, things like that. Do they provide enrichment? Again, that's a big one for being able to not only complete your data, but also keep that data up to date. But again, just some things to consider, make sure you have answers to and questions to ask as you're evaluating data partners. All right, so we're a couple of minutes over. Lauren had a question for us. How long before data is considered stale? How often do you suggest data be updated? Quick answer to that, Lauren, is of course it depends. One person's definition of stale may be very different from somebody else's. For us, as our own internal best practice, we re-verify our data in our database that we offer to our customers every 90 days. So that's a good balance between staying on top of it, making sure the data is reliable and validated, versus balancing the amount of time and effort and resources that go into doing that. Because of course, validating data and staying on top of that is resource intensive, either from an internal resources standpoint or from a cost standpoint, because of course, if you're using a third party, then there's an obvious cost to them as far as staying on top of that. And so you really need to find that balance. And some people and some use cases, some industry stuff like that may be able to get away with less reliable data than some in other places where it's really, really vital for them to stay on top of it and be 100% accurate. So yeah, like I said, short answer, it varies, but I think we strike a pretty good balance here at Sales Intel with ours. All right. We can hang on here for a few more minutes if anybody has any other questions for us. Happy to stick around. If not, we'll let you guys go. I really appreciate everybody for hanging around a few
Yeah,
minutes after.
absolutely. Good stuff. And we'd be happy to, if you have questions after the fact too, we can.
Yeah, like I said, we'll
Yeah.
email you tomorrow with a link to the recap. It'll have both the recording and the deck, and you can reply directly to that email if you have any follow-up for either one of us. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today, David. It was great having you on,
Yeah,
man.
fantastic. Yeah, enjoyed it.
All right,
Thanks,
thanks.
everybody. All right, have a good one.